This podcast has been made possible by Ledge.
Hello, this is Eliran Glazer. I am the CFO of Monday.com, and you are listening to CFO Thought Leader.
This is episode 912.
Creating that operating profile is key priority for me. And that involves improving broadly our operating cadence around whether it's, processes or risk management, our forecast and our planning and our quota setting, commissions. But most importantly, we're getting to the cusp of revenue run rate that will put us in a different, inflection point and different scale of operating. And I feel very good about the progress we've made in the last 12 months, and I'm hoping that we continue to build on that.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with CFO Sapna Kapur of Sensor Tower. When Sapna Kapur traded the professional life of a management consultant for an operations role inside a corporation, she probably had no idea she'd be making the largest career year investment of her professional life. She would stay at the company 12 years. Nor could Kapur have known that on completion of her 12-year stint, she would in short order be entering the CFO office. Now, we'll point out that Kapur's sizable investment of career years with a single company is not dissimilar from many of the finance leaders who have shared their career journey with us. However, what intrigues us, and we think will intrigue you as well, is that Kapur made this investment of years a tour of duty that would validate her CFO growth credentials for years to come while being employed by Google from 2007 to 2019, a span of time during which the company would grow from $20 billion to $182 billion. Our episode featuring CFO Sapna Kapur begins after this. Does your finance team struggle with routine tasks like reconciliation and manually managing multiple bank accounts? Many tech companies today have complex finance operations and massive amounts of data in different disconnected silos. Whether you're reconciling across 6 different payment processors or between NetSuite and the bank, closing the books can be a nightmare. Ledge has found a better way. Ledge is a finance operations platform that connects all your banking, payment, and accounting systems into one unified platform. Ledge automates revenue reconciliation across all systems, right down to the transaction level, and instantly matches payments, invoices, refunds, chargebacks, or any other transaction. Ledge gives you real-time visibility into your cash position across all accounts and alerts you about issues and at-risk funds in real time, so you can act in real time. And get this, Ledge requires no engineering resources. Ledge plugs right into your existing stack, so you can get set up instantly. Ledge puts finance teams back in control. Learn more at ledge.co. Hello, we're speaking with Sapna Kapur, CFO of Sensor Tower. Sapna, welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Really nice to be here.
Yes, it's nice to have you with us. And as always, we begin by asking to look back for us and try to identify some of those experiences you feel prepared you for this role. What comes to mind for you?
I have to say, my path to the CFO seat was what I would describe as somewhat non-traditional. There's really, as I look back on my journey, there's 3 phases that I can identify. Phase 1 was, I started my career as a consulting professional, focused very much on strategy consulting, dealing with problems facing some of the largest organizations, in some cases well run, in some cases not so well run, and really helping their leadership think through that. And that is what gave me the foundation to be aware and have insight about problems that organizations face. And that was phase one. My second phase, and that journey led me to Google, in a role in a similar capacity, where I was working with the leadership of various functional areas within Google on business issues, operational issues. At that point, somewhere within that journey, I made a transition into owning the finance function for various parts of Google, different organizations, primarily focused on ads and commerce, which obviously were the big monetized parts of Google's portfolio at the point that I was involved with them, and that. That phase of my career where I really developed my financial chops, working with large scaled organizations across go to market, across engineering, R&D, infrastructure, was a very meaningful part of my journey, and what led me finally to owning this seat. And about 4 years ago, I transitioned out of Google into the startup ecosystem, took on a role running finance at a smaller startup, and that is where I saw the power of what it takes to really help drive an organization forward, especially as we went through the COVID shock to the system, and in a small organization, finance ended up playing a big role in helping navigate that. And those three chunks of my journey were pivotal in really then finally leading me to a CFO seat, and being at Sensor Tower today. And I think over those years they challenged me in different ways, but that's come together in this capacity and in this role that I now hold.
Well, Sapna, I mentioned before we began to record, we were excited to hear about your Google years, but I want to go back a little earlier than that, because you spent 8 years in management consulting with BCG and Kurt Salmon, two distinguished firms, roughly about 4 years each, I think. And before that, I know that you got your MBA, but you studied in India. Did you grow up in India?
I did grow up in India and then worked with Kurt Salmon Associates, both in India and South Asia, and then in the US, and in different parts of their consulting team, and with different sets of clients. I then did get my MBA at the Wharton School in up in Philadelphia, which essentially led me to BCG, and I spent a few years with BCG before moving to Google.
I see. So at that time, tell us who you were. What was it that was intriguing you about business?
Yes, I loved my consulting years, because as a person who had just started out my career, uh, that role, that capacity offered me a seat around management tables much sooner than it would in than I would have in a lot of organizations. It offered me the expertise and wisdom and exposure to some amazing thinkers within these consulting organizations, because that is kind of who it attracts, and the partners and the leaders within those organizations are individuals who've demonstrated meaningful thought leadership. It exposed me to uh, the what I would call best and not so good practices that organizations fall into often, as they grow, and not because it's badly managed, but those are some of the challenges associated with either growing too fast or not growing, or just how an organization evolves over its life cycle. And I think having a vantage point that allowed me to do all of that, and especially with my kind of path, I did this. I saw what the world looked like in South Asia at that point where I was growing up, how that interacted with many organizations, in Europe and in the US. And the impetus for Kurt Salmon Associates at that point to set up a base in South Asia was really because a lot of their clients were, their supply chains sat in that region, and they wanted to service those. And I think just having that ability to look at these geo differences, the relationships in a global sense, was fascinating for me, and I loved it, and it kind of took me through a decade of my career.
And you are a seasoned consultant when you leave. And just curious about that transition. You step into a sort of a business operations role at Google. You can characterize it for us, but it had to be a change. It had to be, and you were opening a new chapter clearly. Is that how you looked at it at that time?
Absolutely. And it was a transition. Like I said, it's a business operations role. The business operations team was a very small team within Google that was working with the leadership within Google at that time across the different functional areas, really helping them step back and examine the ways that they were functioning. And you have to remember, I mean, this is, I joined Google in oh my gosh, 2007, I think. And Google had been through a fantastic growth phase, and would continue to do that for over a decade after that. But it was an organization of about 3 to 4 thousand headcount, that had grown meaningfully and was just starting to take a bit of a breather to think about, are these the ways that will take us to the next, 2xing, 5xing. And I think this team that I joined utilized the skills from that consulting space, and most of the individuals there were from consulting backgrounds, to really help drive some of those explorations for that leadership team within Google. So it was for me, and for me, it was a transition from serving a multitude of different clients as you would do in a consulting setup, to becoming focused on and really anchoring with one core organization, and really taking that, both the relationships, the understanding, much more beyond what I would in a consulting world, which is, you package up a report and you provide that, but the execution of that is not under the control of the consultants, and really the management takes over. Whereas here, the business operations team also helped land those agreed upon initiatives, and I found that very fulfilling. Not to say that, just the fact that I was part of such a dynamic organization, such a thought leadership organization that was changing the way business was done in multiple sectors, really provided, and within that, in a group that had purview across a vast scope of that organization, really helped me understand what Google was doing at that time, where they were going, and also leveraged a lot of my consulting skills, but provided me what I call the home, where you start to, you're there for the long run, and you kind of work with those leaders in those areas.
But isn't it along the way you get more focused on or perhaps a more traditional finance track becomes your path, or do you not look at it that way?
Yeah, that's exactly how it played out. So, Jack, 2 to about almost 3 years into that journey within Google, I was looking for that operational home that would be mine, that I could, from a functional expertise perspective, and as it were, there's a lot of serendipity involved in even career journeys, and I happen to have the opportunity to work with many of the leaders, and specifically within finance in particular, in this case, as they were rethinking how, both the role and the way the company was run. And I found that super exciting and interesting, because here I was, with all the right strategies. Finance as a function holds the keys to be able to actually implement those and deploy resourcing towards making those strategies real, and really pulling it all together. And I found that really interesting, and that kind of, um, so that was one from a functional perspective. The second was, this desire to really be closer to an operating aspect of what made Google this special, amazing organization that was going to grow to, to what I never even imagined when I joined it. And so between those two, I mean, my opportunity came to make that transition when, big the SMB part of Google's ads business was, the best way to describe that, it was going through a reboot with a new leadership, new management team, new kind of way of, expectations for that business. And I happened to find I became the owner of the finance seat in that reorg, to really help build out that organization, to help establish the ways in which we describe that part of the business, and really saw that transformation over 4 years of that stint. And that was my kind of graduation into this finance role.
Yeah, and Sapna, I just want to mention to everyone, you were there 12 years, first of all, and just some of your titles, because I think it's revealing about the world of Google. On the way up, you're finance director for small and medium business sales and operations. You're finance director, global sales and operations. You are finance director, ads and commerce. You were finance director, global product infrastructure. And again, every organization's a little different. Every company's a little different how they pocket their finance people. But what also occurred to me is, I'm wondering, did you look like your peers on paper? I mean, your background, did it differ? And I'm talking about your consulting roots, and I'm talking about you weren't an accountant, you weren't an investment banker, you didn't have your earlier chapters a little different.
That is true. So the thing about when you think about the Google finance role, was very much, if you kind of break out what finance does in any organization, there is, an accounting track, and there is, you could be in the corporate kind of development, M&A track, and then there is the core kind of operational, what is called the FP&A track, which is financial planning and analysis. A lot of the roles that I had within Google were very would be categorized in that function, because that's where you work the closest with the business on both their day-to-day operational aspects of, if it's a revenue facing function, then you're looking at the revenue profile and the revenue trajectory, and understanding the revenue drivers, and helping them plan out their resources, and really running a lot of analytics that help you understand the key drivers, the levers for a business. And so that's kind of what the role entailed. What accounting was run as a very separate function, and I saw that evolution of Google Finance over the period that I was there, where I think, from one CFO, which was Patrick, to Ruth, there was a big transition, and a natural evolution of, and reflecting the maturity of Google as an organization, where increasingly, the mandate of the whether we pulled accounting and FP&A together under one leader was dependent on whether that organization was run as a GM structure, or was it run as a functional group. And so, yes, to answer your question, my resume did look different, but I think there were enough, it was such a prolific time within Google, a time of growth, that there was a lot of movement across functions, a lot of people drawn into roles like this from different parts of the organization, from different parts of kind of functional expertise. And there was enough of a, because of the scale of Google, there was enough of a need for depth in, one kind of aspect of finance, that I think, there were others like me, not too many, but I would say there was a motley mix of, whether some folks had come in from banking and found this route, and some were growing through the accounting, and there was enough scale in each of those aspects that they could absorb a lot of people. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of people sitting in Google Finance, supporting that organization.
So, I always like to ask, when you talk to your peers that grew up in other, like at PepsiCo, or maybe it's General Electric or IBM, when you meet finance people at conferences or what have you, your experience is really this growth experience. I mean, very few of those companies experience what Google did over the period of 12 years that you were there. You were in an organization that was just accustomed to growing and growing, that it shaped the culture around growth.
It absolutely did. I mean, yes, we saw phenomenal growth in the 10 years, 9 years that I spent in finance in particular, and the 12 years that I spent in Google. It was growth focused, and it was focused on making big bets, and you saw that in terms of, which was also what I would call spend focused. So there were parts of the organization where there were big bets made, because that is kind of the way, given its size and scale, that was the philosophy there. And I think it's obviously done amazing things. And it was fascinating it was very inspirational to be a part of that ecosystem and that culture at that point.
One more question just about the organization. I think you mentioned when you first joined the organization, you were part of a small team, which you really kind of enjoyed. I'm wondering, is Google famous for small teams or not necessarily? Or
it has done an amazing job at the scale that it is to still maintain that culture of small teams in parts of the organization where it matters. There are, of course, the business is so huge that in some areas it is impossible to not have large teams.
Interesting. Okay. Well, enjoyed talking about that with you. Now you step out, finally, like you described. Did you always have an entrepreneurial itch, or is this something that I imagine you were in the Bay Area with Google. It's hard not to acquire that itch, I would imagine, at points. But what would you tell us? Did you always have entrepreneurial ambitions for yourself?
Well, I wouldn't say I had. Yes, I was very fascinated by what it takes to be a part of a small organization, and to help its growth. Get in, at a time uh, where an organization is being formed, because whether it's the culture, whether it's the processes, whether it's the ways of functioning, the skeletal kind of structure of an organization, and really be a part of that journey. And I say that because, if you think about my journey, I kind of went from consulting, where I'd worked with lots of organizations, to this amazing organization that had achieved, what I would call, and even today does, like the pinnacle of what a good organization should look like, but hadn't seen that journey of how do you get to a place that allows you to then, and how do you do the things that allow you to then scale, if you find the right fit. A lot of it is obviously the business aspect of it, the fit, the value proposition. But I was excited about being a part of that journey. Also because, from a role perspective, the kind of the more comprehensive nature of responsibilities and the cohesiveness of having everything, every decision that if I think from a CFO lens, not just the P&L oriented decisions, but the balance sheet oriented and the cash flow decisions all coming together, with one under one umbrella to really help drive, both the short term and the long term trajectory of an organization. The opportunity to just work, with entrepreneurial minds that are not, that are actively looking to change the way things are done, and bringing new ideas, new ways, new value propositions to the market, was super exciting to me at that point in my career. And I thought it would offer me a really amazing platform personally as well.
So you leave Google, and in short order, you are stepping into your first CFO role. I'm wondering, that's you had that mindset. It's clear that you were ready to be a CFO, or could you have been a chief strategy officer? Could you have been a COO? I don't know.
I I view my role, and even the way I'm set up today, as a expansive CFO, scope of, I have, in my current capacity, for example, I run a lot of the revenue operations, go-to-market operations aspects of it, of Sensor Tower. I have that team that that I'm establishing.
I'm wondering if you came out of Google just saying the CFO office is where I want to be, whether it, or did you still evolve a little in the years that followed?
I think I came out of Google gunning for the CFO office.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear.
Right.
Let's talk about, and you enter the CFO office at Sensor Tower in 2022. So you've been there over a year now. Let me just come out and first ask you to tell us about this company and what are its offerings about.
Absolutely. So I'm very excited to be at Sensor Tower, and so Sensor Tower is we position ourselves as as a leading analytics provider for the app engagement and advertising metrics at scale. And what I mean by that is we have a SaaS platform that has that had its roots in gaming, in mobile apps, and then over Sensor Tower's journey, which has been about 10 years long at this time. They acquired another organization called Pathmatics, which provides advertising insights at scale across a multitude of ecosystems. And so we have the unique ability to combine a lot of engagement, advertising, purchase, audience metrics at scale for a variety of use cases across the industry. And a lot of our insights are utilized by financial firms that are making investing decisions, by agencies and brands that want to understand the landscape of advertising and how digital, either engagement, commerce is evolving, or we look at, we've always been very deep with a lot of the gaming providers who've been, front runners in this online digital space. And we're what I would describe a late stage, about to hit triple digit, ARR revenue run rate. Very interesting time for us to be in this space, and for me personally to be a part of helping both help the finance organization, but like I said, also several of the operating teams within Sensor Tower scale and be ready to support the next phase of growth. Again, we know that a lot of the digital, mobile, all of that is a huge part of any user, any consumer's time and engagement, and now commerce. And being in a company that has the ability to, through a lot of data science, through a lot of AI applications, through a lot of first party ownership of panel data, be able to infer the landscape of and the evolution of that landscape at both a macro and a micro level is very exciting. It's been a very fun journey, and I'm looking forward to being that source of truth in the space that is increasing part, that will be an increasing part of the digital kind of economy and commerce and mind share. So that's kind of what we do. We're we try and be the source of truth for the space. We've had great success in that, and we're continuing on that journey and hoping to accelerate that given the assets that we have.
Can you provide us with a sort of an abbreviated history of Sensor Towers? I think it's private equity owned today, but its capital structure over time?
Yeah, sure. So it's a very very prudently grown organization is the best way to describe that. It is indeed private equity owned, but the company started with a very small amount of capital raised. We have two co-founders. They've been with the company since its beginning and are still operating it and active in determining its trajectory. um, they raised a small amount of capital, some less than, I would say less than, not even in the double digits, and then pretty much grew it organically through what I call real revenue growth and real, dollars to the bottom line invested back into the business. About at this point, right during COVID, they were acquired. The majority ownership now resides with Riverwood Capital, which acquired, which came in and provided some capital to Sensor Tower. And year later, Pathmatics, which is the advertising provider that Sensor Tower acquired, came in under the fold, and their founder and their CEO is still with us, and again driving the path forward. And we haven't done any significant raise since then. And the company, and under my watch in the last year, one of my objectives is really to kind of get it to that profitability and at scale. And I think we're very excited about making that making that transition, making that big next step for the organization. So it's not a and this is a company that did this before it was in vogue, so to say, because I think over that 10-year period, a lot of organizations were consuming a lot of cash to drive the top line. In some cases, which was sustainable, and in some which wasn't. Whereas Sensor Tower has, essentially not raised a lot of capital to achieve the scale that it has. And I think to me, that's very, it's to the credit of the founders and the management team that have been in place. And I think it's holding us in good stead now. And we hope to continue that kind of prudent, path to scale and to operating at scale.
So yeah, especially when you're scaling, your lines of sight are so important to understand whether the company is performing the way you want it to. Can you share with us? You step into the role, and are you seeing all the numbers you need to see? Do you want to see them sooner? Is the data there waiting for you, the information?
I wish. But again, I think the data was all there. Was that being packaged in a way and at the kind of the velocity that you need to really have forward visibility and the ability to course correct? I would say no. That was a work in progress. But I'm very proud of what my teams have done under my, a lot of the people that I hired a lot of the existing folks, where I feel like we're in a really good place. But it's a journey. But
I know you're saying a work in progress. I would love to know what you did to sort of get your priorities in order, and whether it began with meetings, raising the profile of certain metrics and how they had to be delivered more frequently or more timely.
All of those, yes. So it started with, for me, I consider accounting as the bedrock of, that is where what the truth is, and that needs to be as clean and as quickly established for you to even have a future looking conversation. So one of the first asks was, there's two main agendas within accounting. One is get our monthly close done within the first, whether it's 8 days or 9 days post close of the month. And that hygiene was not there in the organization. We're very much within that now, and I'm very happy with that. But really getting that under control, along with that, just from a long term kind of risk management perspective, really getting our audited financials by big fives, like those are big initiatives within that world, along with managing, and reviewing a DSO DPO cash profile on a regular basis. So that's
Right.
one aspect. um, but then you look at, the second big chunk of what needed to be done was, there was no culture of, it's a SaaS company, but we were so there wasn't really an end of quarter kind of framing of the numbers that was coming together until pretty much close to the end of quarter, which is not super helpful from my perspective. So we really instituted a lot more rigor around revenue forecasting, ARR forecasting, the discipline about, getting together every week to review those with the top leadership of the company, and really getting precise about that, and really kind of focusing on an EOQ trajectory. And I think that helped a lot of the kind of getting stability and comfort around the operational performance of the company and having that visibility. The third big piece, which we did over the last over the fall and in a lot of detail, was really running a strategic planning process in a whether it was creating the right kind of cost centers and budget allocations and really tying all the initiatives together in a plan that was truly guided by the strategy that we hoped to execute against. And I think once you do all that and off of that, a discipline around a monthly review of every single metric and really putting that together on paper so that both the leadership and me in particular have that at our fingertips at any point to really see where the direction, how we're doing against our plan, what is changing in our understanding of revenue, and how do we then course correct into what a typical kind of process of establishing a forecast on a monthly basis and doing a hard close on a monthly basis. So all of those things really then help pull that the all of the data that we need, and so those are what I call core kind of operational, along with this layering in metrics at a much tighter level of precision around pipeline, around contribution margins, and around really thinking about productivity of our go to market resources and so on. I think those have helped tighten our operations to a large degree, and I think now provide me and the leadership team a lot of great insight on a regular basis.
Well, let me ask you this then. There's a strategy planning meeting, and I don't know how often you have them. Maybe it's a monthly meeting, and everyone's gathered there, and you're coming down the corridor, and you swing open the door. What do the people around the table think you're about to ask them? What is it that you're likely to ask that group of people?
That's interesting. We do this once a quarter. I think my biggest ask is, so I have a very good, I get very periodic information about the weekly kind of revenue performance, and I have a lot of depth in that. But my question to our vertical, we run our go to market by verticals, vertical leaders, is always about what they're hearing in the market, which is something I don't get it from the numbers as much. I only get it from their context about and it's a combination of what I'm hearing in the macro combined with what they're hearing in a lot of these conversations that then informs my perspective on what should be the how is the world around us shaping, and what does that mean for our operations and what we need to focus on. But beyond that, when you put the top functional leaders of the organization together, my questions, I have a lot of questions. I'm always very focused on what is the product and engineering team delivering that will impact revenue longer term, and how do we know when how and how do we really then build that into our go to market projections, and when will that hit that. So that's like one of my questions. The second question that's like the lifeblood of a company like ours is really around the performance of our upper funnel, and all the efforts that our marketing and our both even product are doing to really fill that funnel for us. And so those would be some of the questions that I would have for that group. Within my own organization, I have full visibility into how our cash profile is evolving, and how our what are some of our other financial metrics and how those are doing. But those would be the questions that I am always trying to get more answers to. And
When
really,
you're let me ask it this way, because finance is evolving, it's collaborating at a different level with different functions within companies today. There's a lot of need for collaboration to explore that upper funnel. And I'm just curious, like when you're trying to really better understand the upper funnel, or you're having some discussion around, customer behavior, who's at the table?
The owner of making those decisions is our chief marketing officer. We have a fantastic leader in our CMO who's come from another scaled organization. He's from Adobe, and so he really owns the agenda for driving the upper funnel. So none of my discussions are ever only can ever be only finance, and the upper funnel is a combination of a lot of marketing activity that occurs in that team. It takes the our conversations range from the modality that we want to use. Are events much more productive for us versus just advertising and pure kind of conversion related performance advertising related spend. It takes the form of what are those, and really getting precise about that data. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the first things that I did is seeded a group, a couple of individuals who now look at marketing metrics in a lot of detail and are trying to make that journey of from the time a customer engages with us, how do they and how do we convert them into leads and opportunities over a period of time. So we still have lots of gaps there, but that's one of the things we're working very hard on. But it also involves not just the marketing team that kind of brings in the leads, but then we have our BDR team that actually sits at it's between the handoff from marketing into our sales executives, where they really keep turn them into real opportunities and leads, and then their perspectives, because they get on the phone and call all of these prospects and really have conversations, and so they hear about what the sentiment is, and they are in the room. And then of course our sellers, who are our new business sellers, who are and their leaders are in the room. So I think it's you're absolutely, I mean, none of these conversations are independent finance. I mean, I think they would be bad conversations if they were just independent finance, because and my own perspective, and maybe again grounded by my journey, is finance is a reflection of the strategies, or a good finance and financial plan is a reflection of the strategies of the organization, rather than the other way around, where you say, I have a financial plan and now I'm trying to getting everybody aligned on it, which is, I think, the wrong way around. So as much as possible, I want those leaders engaged in this. That is, it becomes a plan that we all feel we agree with, and we want to operate against, and we will operate against. And I think that is what leads to a great plan and success.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I asked this question of different finance leaders, and some will tell me that the inner workings of their collaboration, that they found they had to do this differently or that differently. I think it's been such a part of your journey all along. You don't realize that you encourage collaboration in how you manage and lead people. It's in your sort of DNA at this point. So I don't think you necessarily have to stop and think, how did I encourage collaboration? How am I doing? What do you think?
I think you're right. Just the path that I've taken has always had kind of a cross-functional collaboration aspect to it that is key to success. You can never drive big change in organizations without everybody coming to a table and agreeing on that change and how they're going to be navigating that. And I think running a good organization where the mandate and the ownership of different processes and aspects of success are owned by different individuals requires their buy-in for you to create a plan that you can truly function against. Now, what I can do at my end is provide the metrics that help drive that conversation. And I take that's the one thing where how we define those metrics and what we measure, and the the veracity of those, and the consistency of those are things that I take very seriously. As a that's my one of the key aspects of my role, of making sure that we are all looking at the same set of information, we all have the same data points to make decisions. But then I think that unless you align around that based on those data points as an organization, as a leadership team, it's very difficult to make progress. I would say, in my experience now, going back to consulting, in larger organizations, often one of the things that starts to happen is that link sometimes gets broken, and you might have leaders who are looking at slightly different versions of what the truth is, and then that alignment can sometimes break down or not. And I think good organizations make an effort to pull that leadership team together as often as they can, so that alignment stays, because that then gets communicated down into the org and into their thinking about what they need to do and how they need to align their people. So I think I'm a huge proponent of that, that step, and that aspect, and giving it due time and credence.
Well, excellent. Thank you for allowing me to ask you a few extra questions there. I apologize, we're running long. I want to jump to our finance strategic moment question. Again, this might have happened anytime during the course of your career. And again, the question is really designed to allow our guests to identify a moment of strategic insight that the CFO guest has had, and whether it led them to pursue a risk or an opportunity, whatever it may have been. Pursue a risk, avoid a risk, pursue an opportunity. All right, Sapna, please, do you have a finance strategic moment for us?
I will go back to my what I described as my first kind of foray into finance, and recognize that I had the good fortune of kind of joining this large scaled organization that was running at that point about 10 million of revenue, and was 3 to 4,000 individuals. Um, and being a part of that restructuring team. But what was an aha moment for me was, I worked very closely with the leadership of that team to come up with metrics that were different from what we had been tracking up until that point. And just to kind of give a little more color there, Google runs a large customer segment for advertising, where we deal with some of the largest advertisers in the world, and we think about that business. But then there is this, about I would say less than 50%, but meaningful segment that deals with the smallest advertisers, and the small advertisers and do not behave, and do not have the same kind of patterns and behaviors as the large advertisers. But for a variety of reasons, we were using metrics very similar to in both of those sets of organizations, and that would not allow us to really understand the behavior or explain the behavior that we were seeing in the small segment. And I think, as a part of this team, as everybody kind of gathered around the room and said, how do we really explain what we're seeing in this business in a way that is relevant to this segment, and really bring those new metrics, create those new metrics, because nobody was tracking them, nobody knew how to track them in some cases. But and again, we started to think about inflows, like cohorts of advertisers rather than individual advertisers, and really bringing that thinking into the organization. And once we kind of had that determined at the top level, I saw so many things realign in that large organization around those metrics, because those got adopted by the leadership. But then that led to organizational structural changes, so that we grouped our teams differently, their compensation structures, and what were we measuring, what were we rewarding. To me, that was a big aha of how the power of the right metrics, and how that can both change the narrative of how an organization gets described, but also how it gets managed and how it operates itself. And I think I, uh, I've never forgotten that. I always kind of think of that anytime I go into a new role, of what are those metrics that will drive the right behavior, and try and bring that into the organization. And I've, seen that now. I've made a few moves in my career at this point, and every time I bring those in, they drive they create that alignment, the right metrics. Now you could completely, it can be the opposite. But for me, where the wrong metrics will lead to absolutely, disastrous outcomes. But I think spending that time to really understand what is this business trying to achieve, what are the metrics that would measure what we are really trying to do, and then really creating a scalable, sustainable way of measuring those, evangelizing those, and driving adoption. I've seen the power of that. And I think that was for me a strategic moment. And then I think going back to, my whole planning conversation, I mean, just the plan has to be a living, breathing, reflection of your strategy, not the other way around. Every number in that plan has a story behind it. And for me, like, I've seen that in my career, that the minute you expose that story, that will highlight both the disconnects that exist in strategy, but often will help align that strategy. And I think those are kind of my two big, insights that I always have with me as I think of any organization that I'm a part of, and any organization that I'm looking to, help get to the next level.
From episode 811, this is 1 Minute with Jason Kane, CFO of Mills and Nebraska.
They should. But what I learned when I stepped into my first CFO role is if you're going to scale a business, putting system, process, dashboarding, and technology in place in a repeatable way. One of my favorite phrases is it scalable, is it portable? If you can't scale it with the business and you can't port it to a business you acquire, it's not a good system or technology. And so that is definitely something we're focusing on right now. That's something over the next year that we will really work on, is getting a couple seats filled in the team that is needed for growth, and then getting good baseline systems in place, getting good reporting, because it was and still is in some ways very Excel driven, but we're very rapidly moving toward a much more automated set. So yeah, big focus there.
We're going to jump to our mentoring round, where I ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. We want you to think back to your first 30 days in the CFO office, that you had just stepped in it, really. And what is the piece of advice you wish someone had given you then? So if you could go back in time and share this with you, this is what you'd whisper in your ear. What would it be?
Yeah, I think my advice and my realization about the CFO role was, was just the breadth of that role. It's a what I call, it's a part your source of truth, but you're also controls and mitigation. You're evangelist for the organization. You're the source of truth and the face of the organization to a lot of external stakeholders. And I think there are very few other roles, that there's, the CEO gets full purview, CFO gets full purview of the organization. And I think you have to kind of step into that platform that this role offers you, and really own it in its entirety, because you're the person that a lot of internal and external stakeholders look to be that source of truth. And I think, so, really owning that platform and that narrative is important. The other thing that I always, I would advise anybody, and I think has helped me in my career, is really, you know my focus is on, yes, the quarter's performance is important, and the immediate short term performance is important, and all my processes, those are what I call baseline processes, have to be perfect and working, and you can't afford to make mistakes there. But the focus over time, you want to build an organization that has those processes and those aspects nailed down, so that it frees up time for me as a CFO, and for that individual. My advice would be, you want to create time to be able to look to the future. your role is not just today, it's also what's coming down 3 quarters out and what's coming down 3 years out. And you need to have space in your operations to spend time on that. And I think that is critical, because big part of finance can be backward looking, but I think the value add aspect of finance is forward looking. And the more time you can create in being able to do that as a CFO, as a leader, I think the more you are helping the cause of the organization. I think those would be my pieces of advice. And of course, hire the best that you can. I mean, no, CFO is not, it's not a one individual role. It's a team that takes, and it takes a lot of experts to support that agenda. So, absolutely, hiring is critical.
Well, thank you for that. We're going to ask you now to reflect a little on the personal side for us. We're wondering if you're sort of known for a personal habit or part of a daily routine, something that you've done for over time. You're known for it. This is what Sapna does. This is how she does it. Anything come to mind when we ask for a personal habit, part of a daily routine, something that you do that sets you apart?
I would say, I don't know if I'm known for that, but in my own kind of, for my own sake and for my own kind of personal, you know, um, sanity in some cases, or just to deal with the noise. I think a few years ago, I kind of got into the habit of maintaining like having this time in my day where I have a moment or a few minutes of reflection, which I found very useful to do. It's almost like a quiet time that you save for yourself, that allows you to reground, because there are heated moments, and there are lots of decisions that are being made, and lots of intense uh, sessions that I'm a part of. But really having that those few moments
Is it meditation or reflection, or
it's
how do
not.
you?
It's not. It's almost like a moment of gratitude of, like, you're doing this because you like this, and this is what it gets to you, and why just kind of bringing it back to why you're doing what you're doing is super helpful to me.
Nice, keeps you grounded.
I think it takes you away from the day-to-day pulls and pushes, and really just focuses, even if for a few moments, on that long-term kind of, why are you here version. And I think I found that very grounding and useful.
Nice. Would you have a book selection for us? It doesn't have to be a business book. It might be something that you read to escape with. Anything come to mind if we ask for a book selection?
Oh, there is a really interesting book that I read. I think it was released last year. It's called it was I think by a couple of GSB, the Graduate School of Business at Stanford professors wrote this, and it's called Humor Seriously. I was introduced to it in one of the CFO groups that I'm a part of, and we had Jennifer and Naomi, who are the writers of this, come there. But I found that very interesting, because its value prop and its thesis is that humor is an underrated, underutilized aspect of managing and creating an environment that creates both cohesion and belonging and safety. And their proposition is that more leaders should be using this, and many leaders have in fact used this through their careers, not just within business, but across, whether it's politicians or management leaders. And I that really resonated with me, because it's a way to bring levity into situations that can often create a lot of angst. And I've seen a few examples of people that I admire who use that beautifully, and I thought that book really resonated with me. So I would highly recommend that for anybody who's trying to make their day-to-day interactions with their teams and their peers a little more
Can't
fun.
humor be risky? Can it be a little risky at times? I mean, we're all sort of entrepreneurial when it comes to humor. We all have our own sense of humor, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
It
Uh,
is, but I think
yeah.
creating a space that allows that aspect, that allows you to bring that to the table, and know that you know uh, that it will be appreciated, and it creates that bonding within the organization, I think is important as a leader. And in some cases, I've seen really intense discussions, kind of punctuated with a little bit of humor, create a very different dynamic of, you still retain the seat at the table, and you create a bond with the person that you may not agree with fundamentally, but at least that it takes it, it brings the person back to the fore in a way that I found really powerful. But you're right, I think you have to be sensitive to, that humor being, if you are at one extreme spectrum of that humor range, then yes, I think you risk alienating some. But
Give us the name of the book one more time. And no, I think finance leaders could use humor. I think it is a good supplement to their diet. So
it's called Humor Seriously: Why Humor is a Secret Weapon in Business and Life.
Nice. Thank you for that. We haven't had it before, and I suspect there are many finance leaders that might really enjoy it and benefit from it. Let's move to our last question. We're going to ask you to look forward for the next 12 months. And what we want to know is your priorities as a CFO for the coming 12 months. What are those priorities?
Absolutely. Again, we are going through what I would call, some fundamental kind of, if you look at the macro environment, some fundamental uncertainties, whether it's associated with the the public markets. We've heard about the private markets. We're seeing just operating tightness in the system. And so for me, my priorities over the next 12 months are really to help Sensitower navigate this by being as operationally efficient as we can, whether it's, we're looking at every aspect of how we both continue to drive growth, but also maintain an operating profile that stands us, that allows us to be independent at our own kind of, and investing in the areas that we believe are important, and really doubling down, in fact, if anything, on areas that we believe are core to our long-term success. And I think creating that operating profile is key priority for me, and that involves just improving, I say broadly, our operating cadence around whether it's processes or risk management, our forecast and our planning and our quota setting, commissions. Like, there's a whole slew of those that we'll continue to focus on. But most importantly, we're like I mentioned earlier, we're getting to the cusp of the revenue run rate that will put us in a different, I say, inflection point and different scale of operating. And I think my priority is to really help the organization have the right infrastructure, the right processes, the right people, the right kind of agendas, so that we are ready to get into that phase and be ready to keep driving our growth. And it's and I think it's an super exciting time for us. I feel very good about the progress we've made in the last 12 months, and I'm hoping that we continue to build on that.
Sapna Kapur, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me here.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com, and of course our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.